Welcome to the paranormal and metaphysical world of Twilight Tonight. Host DD Moonflyer grew up with very open-minded parents who had many experiences with UFOs and the paranormal. Because of her mom's insistence on exposing her to spiritual classes, meditation, and teachings of Edgar Cayce, DD had a fascination and deep interest in the paranormal. Her own paranormal experiences have led her to seek out and interview other fascinating, knowledgeable people for better understanding of this phenomenon. Now, your host of Twilight Tonight, DD Moonflyer.
Happy Friday, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at Twilight Tonight, WLTK-DB. Tonight, as always, an amazing guest, Machiel Klerk. He's amazing. He's a licensed mental health therapist. He's an international speaker on dreams, and he's a dream worker. He has also traveled all over the world studying healing and dream traditions, and he has an amazing book out called Dream Guidance, Connecting to the Soul Through Dream Incubation. Please welcome Machiel.
Thank you, Didi. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been looking forward to engage in the conversation.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you tonight, Machiel. Machiel, it is so interesting how, from what I understand, you had a traumatic experience when you were 10 that brought you to dreams. Is that correct?
Yes, I think like many of us, we encounter a wounding in our life that then turns out to be the opening to the other world. So in my case, it was my father died when I was 10, relatively unexpected, a huge shock. Then, unfortunately, my family, my culture didn't know how to grieve. So the massive heartbreak was covered up by a silence of not being addressed. So I learned also that a wound that is not being tended to just doesn't disappear, but continues to fester underneath. And in my early 20s, I started reading the books from Carl Jung and others, but especially Jung was the first one that really opened me up to another dimension in life that started revealing itself. And so I started having dreams with my father in it. And I felt that I reconnected with my father on the other side, and got dreams that led me to a connection with parts of myself that I had forgotten or repressed. And so that put me on the lifelong engagement with the world of dream and its inhabitants.
Wow. I always thought Jung was fascinating because of his spiritual growth throughout his career. I could be completely wrong, but did he have something to do with inspiring Alcoholics Anonymous?
Yeah, indeed. He was somewhat unwittingly part of the creation or foundation of Alcoholics Anonymous. He had a patient, Roland O., that came to him in the early 1930s. And he was an alcoholic. After a year, was somewhat cured, went back to the United States, and within months started drinking again. Then he took the boat back to Europe and came back to Jung and said, Jung, you need to help me. You need to cure me because I'm drinking again. And Jung said, there's nothing I can do for you. And then he said, but I can give you some guidelines. And he suggests you need to find a real spiritual experience, because trying to drink is actually an attempt to get a spiritual life. And only a genuine spiritual conversion is the cure for alcoholism. And so that in combination with some shadow work, really owning your own contribution, several steps in AA. And so Roland H. Took Jung's advice, went back, found a spiritual, religious experience, did shadow work, and then met Bill W., who, together with him, founded AA and used some of these principles. And so
That's awesome.
that's the part of the foundational story there.
That's awesome. So, how do you get guidance? How did you find that you got guidance from dreams?
I started to notice that there are multiple dreams, and there's a type of dream that is more like a psychological X-ray that just portrays what is going on inside of us. And I did find it very helpful because, especially anytime, but especially in my early 20s, there were so many aspects in myself that I had no clue that were there. And then in the dream, I could see, oh, there's this character behaving in this and this way. Is sleeping in too long every day. Where do I recognize this? Well, and of course, in my own life, I was having a destructive pattern at that moment of just sleeping in too much and all kinds of destructive things that the dream really portrayed. Hey, here, this is what you do, and it also portrayed how that didn't bring happiness.
Right.
And so that is one way that dreams can do it. Many people have experienced that dreams can maybe portray something about the future, or know something that's helpful, or come with a creative inspiration. I also founded a company based on a dream, so it helps with in that regard. It can help one connect to the beings in the other world. They can meet us, whether it's however you want to call them, a spirit guide or your ancestors or a loved one. We can meet them in dreams. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and we probably have had some experiences.
Yeah, and I think almost everyone I've talked to has had some experiences. Mine was with my brother who passed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and in my case, for example, with my father, and it was so, I lived in an enclosed world view where I didn't know if there was life after death, and if there was even meaning to life, and then connecting again to that, and knowing, hey, this relationship is established and he's there, and of course completely different than if they walk around here, but there's a continuation to life. And if there's a continuation to life, what does my life in the here and now mean? And what does it mean when I move myself to the other side? And what do I want to have achieved and accomplished? And so life becomes so much broader that way. So I think dreams can also help us expand our worldview.
Interesting. I agree. How does it help guide your soul, you believe?
Well, I think that the natural development of the soul is pre-configured in dreams. So the dreams anticipate our own flourishing and help us navigate life. And it does it spontaneously, but we can also engage proactively with the world of dream. And that's what I wrote in that book, is the steps that you can do to ask your dream a question for anything that is relevant to your life. So it needs to have something to do with your soul's purpose. And it can be very broad. It can be, how can I be more happy or more loving or grow my business? It needs to have to do with your soul's life. And you can ask your dream a question, and then your dream appears to be delighted to step in and help.
Right. Is it better? Do you believe it's better to ask a one question, like, how can I find that one person, and leave it at that?
Yes.
Without going, how can I have that one person, the house, the car, the dream?
Yeah.
You know how people will go on, and you're like, whoa.
Yes. Very good point. I've tested it myself and seen it with many people. And the biggest obstacle usually is, if you ask multiple questions, that it becomes challenging which part of the dream is responding to the house which one is to finding a loved one, which one is to my health. And if you ask one question, what is one type of food for me to eat? And then you see yourself drinking water, or someone is offering, my sister had a dream where she asked that, and then she came into a room where there were eggs and peanut butter on the table. She was like, oh, I need to eat a little bit. All right, exactly.
Well, that's kind of funny, actually. So dreams tend to be more symbolic than just coming out and saying, hey, you need to eat protein. You're going to get a lot more symbolic type things.
Yeah.
So like if you dream of certain animals, they're symbolizing something.
Yes, it's the dream can do both. Sometimes it's specific, but the dream is technically is a world. So the dream creates a world. It's not even a movie you see. You're in a world, whatever we imagine this world to be, and it has the tendency to express itself symbolically, like you said, or metaphorically. You walk into a one-way street, and then you would literally walk into a one-way street in your dream. And then you write it down, and you go like, oh, walking in a one-way street. So it uses metaphor and symbolism most of the time, and once in a while it is really literal. I've seen a dream where the dream pointed out, oh, your sister is pregnant. And it was indeed the sister that was pregnant. So
wow.
it
Does
yeah.
I know that some dreams feel different. And I know people have dreams where they're like, I'm dreaming, and they're very vivid dreams.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the difference between just a random dream that you have full of symbolism or a dream that it feels like you know you're dreaming, you know you're in there, and it's almost like you can control that dream? What
Yes.
are the difference?
The difference is mainly one's own awareness. So in the dream in which you know you're dreaming, that's called a lucid dream. A dream in which you're lucid, in which you're aware. And once you're aware that, oh, I am in a dream, you don't kind of blindly live out your whatever you do. You have a much higher ability to engage with the dream environment. And so that moment you can do also experiments. I've had that in which I would yell out, is there anyone with a message for me?
Oh.
And then I had my youth hero, Johan Cruijff, fly to me, and he said, come, I'm going to show you something. And he showed me how to cross a crossing. And I was a little bit baffled by it. And then I did write it down, and then I reflected on it, and I thought, oh, I'm in a place, again, symbolically in my life. I want to leave the clinic I work and go to private practice. I'm at a crossing, and I'm a bit hesitant and anxious on how to do it. And so he described when you cross, you just need to go. When you get anxious, you need to stop. Then you go further, but never go back. And I always remembered that. I was like, oh, I was anxious, I stop, and then I go further. So just as an example, that one, and it's for anyone that becomes lucid, and you can, all kinds of things you can do to become lucid, you can train that, but you can ask for an experience. You can, it's very similar to, before you go to bed, you ask your dream a question, but if you're in the dream, you can also ask a question. You can ask, I once asked, can I experience unconditional love? And then I was zapped in a state of unconditional love that lasted for a minute and then went away. Or you can just test the nature of the dream, like how can I fly and how does that work to fly? Or can I step through the wall? And you learn the reality creating principles, how your own beliefs, thoughts, expectation, willpower, intention co-creates a reality. And actually, if you really take it far, this reality is created somewhat in the same way much denser. So you can learn from dream reality how creating principles in this reality work as well.
Ooh, that's interesting. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
So I know some people, I've talked to people because some people were excited that you were coming on the show tonight. And some people ask me, what if you feel pain? Is
In the
that,
dream.
yeah, I was talking to one of my friends and they're like,
Yeah.
ask him about that. How come I
Yeah.
feel pain in my dream?
Yeah. It's a great question and also a great observation that actually in the dream, one of the in the dream we usually, besides when we're lucid, we usually don't know we're dreaming, and we have all kinds of experiences. So we can feel pain, we can eat cake and it tastes cake. We can hear music. So somehow sometimes their smell. It's a little bit less frequent, but it happens as well. And so in this imaginal world, our mind or the larger mind creates this world that we experience as real, and all our and everything still, we still feel pain and happiness and etc. So why that is exactly, I don't know. It's more like we do feel everything in our dream, and our mind doesn't distinguish between dream reality, or even if I imagine it in the here and now and I really get into it, my whole, if I'm starting to imagine a monster or a burglar coming in or an earthquake, I might get anxious and my heart rate goes up. So our imagination, our body responds to our imagination as if it's real.
So that would probably explain when people have night terrors also.
Yeah,
That fear is actually real for them.
yeah, yeah. They
On
they
a
they think they don't know where they are usually, and they're terrified.
Yeah, on a soul level, what could they do to stop the night terrors?
Engage in in some form of engagement with your own soul, and start saying with soul or whatever people want to use, mystery, God, divine, something larger than oneself, and say, I'm having these night terrors and I'm really scared. Please help me figure out a way to solve the issue. And then maybe do an experiment, ask a question to your dream. Is there, what should I know about this? Is there maybe there's a message that we don't pick up on and it tries to communicate, or are we excessively afraid for something and it shows up, or is there something in our psychological space that is threatening to us, and then can we find a way to build a better way to not vibrate on that frequency. Engagement with our own soul, I use soul for the ease of it, could help. And by talking to it and asking it questions and engaging one's dreams, you can get through these experiences.
Right. I have a couple questions that fascinate me, if you don't mind.
Yes,
You've
please.
traveled all over the world and studied healing techniques and dream techniques of other cultures.
Yeah.
In your heart of heart, which was the most fascinating dream technique, and what culture was it from?
Well, I've learned a lot from many cultures, but I was born in South Africa, and so I, on a certain moment, started having dreams of going back to South Africa, and in the dream I would be landing with the plane in Johannesburg and really crying to my own surprise, like sense of coming home. So I thought, all right, I'm going to South Africa, and then I met these indigenous healers, and they what always did strike me is they had such a natural experience of the other world, that they believe that they could very easily lean into it. I think many of us Westerners, we have a little doubt, or is it real, or we feel the presence of dad or brother or grandpa,
Right.
and then we go like, is that real? And they would be so easy to know, oh, grandpa is present, and then they can engage in some form of an dialogue, and then they get answers on how to heal whatever they're struggling with. So it's especially the naturalness of knowing there's another world that I had to learn, that I really only started knowing since I was early 20s. That before that it was almost like I lived in this one world,
Right.
and now I know there's multiple worlds.
I just think that would be so fascinating to do so much traveling and learn some of these traditions.
Yeah, and all these traditions, they work with ritual,
Yeah.
and ritual is in a certain way a placebo, and not in the way that placebo that is fake, but placebos work, but they don't work because you take the innate substance, but they work because you're actually doing a ritual, and the ritual builds up your expectation and your belief. And so just like in that lucid dream we just talked about, how your own mind creates reality, if you do a ritual, your own mind starts anticipating that you get better, or that you get an answer, and then you expect it and you believe it, and then it becomes more and more real, and then actually it is happening because you're expecting it to happen, and you experience it in the here and now. And that is why the ritual is so important, and that's also one of the ingredients. If people tonight want to ask their dream a question, create a ritual, because the ritual will pump you up, will pump up your expectation and belief and desire, and that somehow is essential for the reality creating principle to happen.
So is it a ritual that's very personal, or is there a set ritual?
No, I think especially because we in the West don't really have a lot of rituals.
True.
We can make our own ritual. If what I noticed also, if I was in South Africa, that they say, oh, if you put this grass under your pillow and you do this has worked for all of us as far as we can remember. So their belief and their expectation has become so dense that they knew, oh, if you do this, you will have a healing dream. And if you believe that, you will have that healing dream. And so if you're in a tradition, it's great to use an existing ritual. But for us, any ritual will do, because technically it's not a ritual, just like it's not really the innate substance. It is the building up of your belief, desire, expectation. So if I wanted to ask my dream tonight, what is one thing I can do to love myself more deeply? Then I would do something symbolically around it. Probably I would draw a heart, and maybe a heart with a question mark on it. And then I would read some Rumi, about ecstatic love poetry. And I would read it out loud, and something to that extent, whatever my imagination also would bring. So everyone can do something, and the bigger your desire is for the answer, in combination with doing something, the better dream response you will have.
Are you a big believer in, after you wake up, write down your dreams, keeping a dream journal?
Yes, I still once in a while make the mistake not to do it. And then half an hour later, the dream has evaporated. It's at night, our short-term at night our short-term memory goes offline because it doesn't work well, and only kicks back online when we wake up. So we have to write down the dream upon waking, otherwise it's gone. And so it has nothing to do with willpower
Right.
or intelligence. Write down your dream. And I also sometimes still forget it.
So if something like really that you remember from the night before, let's say you have a dream in that memory sticks with you.
Sorry, it broke up on my end a little bit. Could you say that again?
Oh, that's okay. So if you have a dream and the symbolism in the dream just stays with you for days, that's something you need to work on, obviously, or you need to look into that.
Yeah, I would consider that an invitation to really work that dream. It is if it's really that strong and you remember it that well, there's something really important for you to know about. And even if it's I've been chased by a massive spider, and the spider is 7 feet tall, that might stay with you for a while.
A long time. A long time.
Yeah, but also that dream is an important dream. So any dream with a high intensity, I want to encourage people, write it down, and there's something in the dream that comes to you because it has some importance for your personal development, for your growth of consciousness, and so write it down and work it. And there's many ways people can work it, but yes, dreams that linger, very important.
I kind of figured I got to check into that green carpet dream I keep having. So when we come back, we're going to talk more about the 5 easy methods that you have in your book. And we'll be back after this message.
If you're a fan of the paranormal world, then you'll love WLTK-DB Talk Radio. Talk shows bringing you the latest on everything paranormal, cryptozoological, metaphysical, true crime, psychic readings, and more. The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.
Well, can you hear me, Michael?
Yes, very well.
Okay, just checking. I can't hear, just to let you know, Andrew. Okay, we're back with Machiel, and he has got a wonderful book out. And I'm really interested in part of the book. It lists 5 easy methods for guidance in your dreams. Can you go over some of those, Machiel?
Yeah, in a nutshell, it's aimed at asking your dream a question before you go to bed in order to get a response at night. And the 5 steps are identify that you have a question. And the best is to have a living question. And I can go into details more. Then number 2 is, once you know what you want to ask, make sure you phrase it in a helpful way.
Okay.
And I can go through all the points later. And then point 3 is engage in some ritual. So you pump up your desire for the dream. Step 4 is sleep, dream, and record the dream. So you have to write it down upon waking. And then number 5 is the integration and manifestation. Work on your dream. There are a couple of suggestions on how to understand your dream and what to do to follow up on the dream response. So those are the 5 steps.
Awesome. So with all of that, this is going to be kind of an odd question, and I'm not quite sure how to say it correctly. So if someone doesn't dream for nights and nights, what is the side effect of that, mentally, spiritually, and physically?
Well, we dream every night. So everyone dreams probably 2 or 3 hours each night. And because our short-term memory doesn't work well, we forget about it. And very often there's a high correlation between people being not interested in what they dream, or not really interested in their dream and their dream recall. But anyone that says, yeah, I haven't dreamt, but I would love to dream, either do this method or start talking to your dream and say, dream, I know we haven't been together for a long time, but tonight, if you come, I'll write you down tomorrow morning.
I think too, sometimes I always tell people one of the things I look forward to the most is sleeping because of dreaming.
Ah, yes.
Like-
And what do you like about dreams?
Oh my gosh, there's so much. One, I like it gives you answers sometimes. And there's one particular dream that I love is swimming.
Oh, yes.
And very clear, I have this recurring dream where I'm swimming in clear water and I can breathe and I can move. And it just feels so good. So when I have that dream for days, I'm like, yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Yes. And are you swimming underwater? Is that
Yeah.
what you...
Yeah.
It sounds also magical to swim underwater, have it clear.
Yeah, I love that dream. And they happen every so often. But that is like the funnest dream I have because I love to swim.
Yeah. Well, it's also a dream that it sounds like the feeling is also, I can just feel sitting with you, how there's like,
Yeah.
this delicious feeling. And dreams, as your friend already noticed, are very embodied experiences. We feel the feelings. And you could even meditate on these feelings in day-to-day life. You can re-access the feeling of, I'm swimming, and you go back in your memory and you feel how you swim and how you breathe. And then you'll just sit in that feeling, and then that state becomes more part of your consciousness, and then you can access it more throughout the day. And then you have an easier way of also swimming through the daytime.
Yeah. That's interesting. I wouldn't have ever thought of that. I just thought it was cool and I could.
Yeah. Well, it sounds very cool. A quick question: is my camera still working well? I see it's a little.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So, Machiel, do you want to go through a little more detail on the 5 methods?
Yeah,
To
sure.
see if it will help
I would
others?
love that. And it's an so for everyone that is listening, they could just follow along. And the step 1 is really identify a question that is important and alive. And you can just close your eyes and just ask yourself, what is alive? What am I curious about? What do I want to know? And usually the first thing that comes up is the most pressing thing. And that can be, gosh, I don't know what goes on between me and my colleague, or I've been working out today and I want to lose weight or eat better, and what kind of food would be good for me to eat, or anything that your own psyche brings up. So, and sometimes it's also something we don't really want to address, which is usually the most important thing to address.
Yep. Nobody likes to look at themselves that way.
No, and like, and this is very Jungian, looking at fairy tales and myths. It's very often the despised little frog that we push away, that actually knows where the golden ball is, or
So true.
yeah, or the beast that has the golden voice. So also to encourage people to actually look at the problems that we have, bring them in. And our own psyche wants to help us work also the really difficult problems. And we don't immediately need to tackle the whole thing. We can start with one small thing. Maybe you're chased by that spider, and it is you ask a little question: how can I feel more safety in my life, or how can I feel more safe? And then you get a dream on how to be more safe, and then you feel into that feeling of safety, and then you go approach the problem. So you can space it out. There's no need to rush. But take the question that has most energy. Yes, whether it is positive or negative. And the dream is really trying to help us. It's like the force of nature wants to help the sunflower become a sunflower. It's not obstructing it, or it wants to be itself. And humans also, something in us wants to be us. And if we can align with it, we can experience its more benign side. So ask a question, and let's say now you feel into it, and it is. I now remember this person who said who felt like, oh, I want to date again, and then felt into its question and said, no, I actually want to know what's my biggest obstacle in dating. And so that's a good question, right?
Wow.
Yeah, and many of us could benefit from asking that question too. And he step two is phrase the question. So he wrote down, what is my biggest obstacle in dating? And it's great because it's one question at a time. It's open-ended, so the dream can answer it. And it is relatively short. It's easier to work with a simple question. But people could, if you don't know, people could ask, what is one thing I can do to love myself more deeply? What is one type of food that is healthy for me to eat? Those are things that are good for all of us. And it seems like the dream is always interested in, oh, okay. Oh, you want to know how you love yourself more deeply? Oh, I'm excited to tell you. And but make it a simple question. And then step three is create a ritual. So doesn't matter what, you can use a standard ritual. If it's a really big question, I sometimes say, well, don't even ask it tonight, but ask it in 3 days, especially health questions, that you work on it. It's like in the old days, they would walk to the temple of Asclepius, the god of healing in Greece, and then they would go through a series of rituals of cleansing and praying and dance and eating or fasting, and then enter into the temple. So they would really build it up, and then they would have an encounter with the healing god or the healing spirit that would prescribe a cure, or sometimes a spontaneous healing would occur. And so that is step three, create a ritual. But I also know about a painter that had a blank canvas that he put next to his bed and said, I would love to have some inspiration. So any ritual is fine. Then step four, sleep. Have pen and paper next to your bed, because the dreams are notorious to evaporate. Write it down, and write it down in the present tense. Include also your feelings. So not, I met neighbor Bob, but I met neighbor Bob and I was disturbed that I saw him because I'm angry with in the dream with him. And include your feelings. And then step 5 is work on the dream. And I can go in some details there, but just to make sure that the first 4 steps came across well. Okay.
They did.
So step 5 is work the dream. And there's many ways to work the dream, and especially because they have a symbolic nature and metaphorical. So think a bit metaphorical. Think as if it's a bit more like a poem, and then ask a question like, "What is happening?" And what is happening, you can describe what is a structure. And very often you see something, like the guy who asked, what is my biggest obstacle in the dream, had a dream in which he was driving in a car in a tunnel, and he says, "Oh, I think I see an animal," and then he's closer and he says, "Oh, it's a tiger." And when I see the tiger, I think it's beautiful, but I get really scared. I slam the brakes and I'm out. I back up out. And he asked the question, "What is happening?" He said, "I am driving, moving through life, and when I see something that's beautiful but scares me, I slam the brakes and I'm out." And then you read it against the question, "What's my biggest obstacle?" And it's like, oh, my biggest obstacle is when I get really interested and it's really beautiful, I get afraid and I run.
Right.
And then you can ask then he can of course ask more questions, but that is how the question can work. What is happening? Describe it, tell it as if it's a movie to someone else. What are the steps? What's the storyline? That gives an easy way for people to be with it. And of course, think a bit metaphorical. You can ask questions as, what do I associate to? Very often, neighbor Bob is not really about neighbor Bob, but my neighbor Bob is generous. All right, so generosity shows up as neighbor Bob. And what is this generous character doing? It's inviting, or it is gives me something. Oh, and then I learn, oh, okay, I'm meeting something generous and it's doing these things. And then I can figure out how does that relate to my question. So what do I associate to very often works as well.
Well, that makes so much sense. So out of curiosity, how do you feel about like dream dictionaries? Because obviously
Yeah.
dreams mean different things.
Right. Dreams are, till a big part, personal symbols of your own soul. So if I dream about neighbor Bob, it means something different than if his wife dreams about Bob or his children, right?
Right?
And so there you cannot say neighbor Bob means, but there are some general themes that a sense of home. So things like Jung would call archetypal characters or structures, home, the old wise man, a horse. A horse is very often a particular form of an instinct, but I could have been bitten by a horse, and you might have dreamt all your life about having a horse, and someone else might have had a horse and had to be on the horse every day against her will. Then we would have all kinds of different responses to the same character. And so it's very contextual. So a dream dictionary could help a little bit sometimes, but I would say what helps more is ask questions as, what is happening? What do I associate to this? And a certain way of reading fairy tales gives a feel for dream structures and dream manifestations as well. You could almost say that fairy tales are a way that the dream of a tribe.
Yes. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because when I talk to people, they always ask me, what do you think my dream means? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. And also there, what is the experience in the dream? Could you say, if where we started the hour is dreams are worlds we find ourselves in that we experience to be real. So, you were in an imaginal world. An imaginal doesn't mean not real, but not like this reality, and real world, but an imaginal world. And you had a certain experience. Interesting. Tell me about your experience. What was it
Right.
like? What did you do? What did you experience? What did you feel? And then you will learn a lot about what the person experienced, and that will give a lot of clues just by itself.
Now, in your opinion, do you believe we're still in body, like in our physical body when we dream? Or do we go in and out of our bodies sometimes?
Yeah, yes, all of that.
Oh, I do a lot of traveling then.
I don't know exactly, but I think there's also not one type of dream.
Right.
There's I think in some forms, what I often experience, if I meet deceased loved ones, I am almost always in the house I sleep in. I'm in my own home or in my own bedroom. And I think that I'm actually out of my body, meeting them in the out of body world, that for the ease we would call dream. But if you would zoom into it, probably that's an out of body experience versus the dream world seems to be slightly different. So I think there's a range, just like if people take mushrooms or ayahuasca, they're also in another world while they're
Yeah.
still here, but they're also not in the same world.
As the rest of us at that moment.
Yeah.
So, do you think our mind, when we come back to center, do you think our mind protects us from knowing we're out of body?
It's very interesting that out of body experiences and connections to the other world have the feature of that we have a sense of losing time. So
Yeah.
somehow our at night is very easy. We go to bed, we sleep, we have several hours of dreaming. We remember nothing. So our experience of being in the other world has the feature of losing time. If people are in a coma, they don't remember. Oh, there was months and months. Sometimes it's like, oh, I thought it was hours, or they're gone for they're a near-death experience, and they say, oh, it was 7 minutes, but it felt like I've been gone for several months.
Yeah.
Or they have an experience in which they meet a UFO, and it's either they're gone for 3 minutes, but they have hours, or they're gone for hours and they think it's 3 minutes. So any encounter with the other worlds seems to have the feature of time becomes we experience in a different way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And also our awareness just doesn't remember. So it's also a form of an awareness practice to stay lucid while visiting the other worlds. And because I think we all visit them frequently, we just all forget about it.
Yeah. I always thought that too. I always thought it was fascinating. I always thought it was fascinating when I have dreams and I feel like they've been hours and hours, and I wake up and it's only 10 minutes have gone by.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
frustrating. It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah, yeah. It's a common feature of a different experience of time when we're in these other worlds.
Yeah, I like how you call it the other worlds. It's so interesting. If you think about it, it makes so much more sense to me than before, than just going to sleep and having a dream. If you see that, it's almost like a meditation,
Yeah, yeah. And
which I really love.
and we have all kinds of experiences there. And
Yeah.
even if we don't know the experience, like you don't maybe not exactly know why you were swimming in the clear ocean or in the clear water, but just to bring that sense of peace and calm and ability to breathe well and to see well into your day-to-day life. then you have a different experience in this world of, oh, I'm breathing well, I'm at ease. And you can practice them being in that state. And neuroscience also shows if we have embodied experiences, our brain rewires. It's not by thinking I should be calm. It's by experiencing calmness and then feeling it in the body, and then the brain rewires. So your dream brings you a beautiful opportunity to practice
Absolutely.
this calmness, and then you have more of that experience in day-to-day life, and that sounds great to me.
Me too. No, Jan, did he? I thought I read somewhere that he also believed in reincarnation.
Yes, and at the end, he writes also in his autobiography or biography about that he leans towards thinking that life reincarnates, and it is also part of this notion that he developed of the collective unconscious, that we are all like a wave is part of the ocean. So every human is part of the collective unconscious, like the wave in the ocean. And technically there's no difference. And so when the wave goes down, a new wave comes up. That would be a new incarnation of the water of life in a new form. So life doesn't stop and end, but life is an ongoing incarnating process, finding new form, new ongoing new creation. So that's one way to think about it.
Yeah. Do you think dreams connect to those lifetimes sometimes?
Yeah, I do. I think that we sometimes still work out problems that, well, it's easy to see that problems that run in our family don't stop with mom and dad, but somehow we have them too.
Yes.
So it runs that way. But I also think it runs. We can have cultural problems. We can have, and let's say that we were a wave and the water has, and then later on we become another wave. That water has clusters of karma or psychological content that still needs to be worked out, and that would explain. I have a phobia for prisons, but why? Well, maybe a previous incarnation was in a prison, and that fear karma is still present, and it's somehow in my psychological constitution to work on that.
Interesting. I agree. Yeah. I always found that fascinating, even in the dream world and in our everyday life, how all that's connected constantly.
Yeah.
And if you break the cycle, the dreams and that fear snaps, it's gone.
Yes, and we can engage with that mystery on helping to break the cycle. So let's say I have a fear, I can ask the dream, what's one way I can do to deal better with this fear? Mm-hmm. Because there is something in the depths of that, in our own being or outside of our own being, that tries to help us solve our wounds and bring into the world our gifts. And there's many ways that people found ways to engage that source. And in my case, it has been dreams, and it's ask the dream a question is just one way you can do it. Some people have other ways in which they do this, and they're all equally valid. But the dreams are one way, and I've learned that despite life can be very brutal, there's a deeply compassionate, wise, kind center that tries to help us deal with the problems we encounter.
Absolutely. Now, Machiel, where do people find you?
Well, they can just write my first and last name and put .com behind it, and then they go to my website.
That's one way.
I do have a 3-day workshop coming up at Esselen, Big Sur, in August. So if people are interested in working on creativity or health, healing, relationships, I'm going to work in depth for 3 days in Esselen in August. Amazon, you can get my book, or any bookstore. It's published by Hay House, so they did well on the distribution. And on the Jung Platform, which is a company that was born in a dream. And there's many programs on African indigenous shamanism or Jungian psychology or dreams that I helped to create, or I created. And those are some areas. Or if they want to be in therapy, they can also go, as I'm a therapist, they can go to my website.
Oh, I should have said that. I think that I said that earlier. That's really fascinating too, that you are a therapist and you're doing all this work is amazing.
Thank you.
Well, Machiel, it has been, you're amazing. And I want to thank you so much for taking time out of I know you're so busy right now, out of your busy schedule, to talk with us about dreams tonight. If you had one more thing to say to people about dreams, what would it be?
Well, experiment and play. You don't need to believe anything I said. Go and ask your dream tonight a question, something that's relevant. Even say, I listen to Dee and Machiel talk about this. I don't know if it works, but dream, here I am. So I don't think, there's no way you can do it wrong. There's some ways that are more effective, but the dream is really interested in helping. So any engagement is is a great way. And if the answer doesn't come in the dream, it will come in synchronicity, or your neighbor tells you something, or life will conspire to help you and engage in a playful way, and that makes it easier.
Machiel, thank you so much. You have a great night, and I hope our paths cross at some point.
Likewise, and I loved your questions and engagement, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Good night. Everybody have a great Memorial weekend. Stay safe. Thank you.
The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.